Meanwhile, you've lost track of tens of thousands of them. The Times also reviewed data that showed the government couldn't reach more than 85,000 of these children who they just turned over into the hands of smugglers, these are modern day slave traders. And you're just giving these children to them. What is going on? Why are you doing this?
Did you know tens of thousands of migrant children have gone missing after crossing the border into the United States? Others are being forced into grueling full-time jobs to pay off smuggling fees, exploited for cash, and left in unimaginable situations. This crisis has exploded under the Biden administration, with border crossings skyrocketing over 300% since Secretary Mayorkas took office. Senator Josh Hawely has unleashed on Mayorkas, calling out the administration's shocking role in what can only be described as state-enabled child trafficking. What's the end game here? Why is our government complicit in putting these innocent lives in danger? Stick around for the details and check the description below for the full video of Senator Hawley's fiery remarks.
A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it, and thousands of children are in physical danger because of what you are doing. You should have resigned long ago. And if you cannot change course, you should be removed from office. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here. Let's talk about the surge in child smuggling and child exploitation that is happening on your watch. Do you know the number of unaccompanied children who have come across the border on your watch?
Senator, I don't have that number at my disposal, but I can assure you that we are incredibly dedicated to the safety and security of those children.
Well, it doesn't appear so based on what we're reading today in the New York Times, what we're reading and seeing from numbers from your own office. The answer to my question, by the way, is 345,807. That's the number of unaccompanied children who have come across the border on your watch. Do you know what's happening to these children? Have you seen this report from the New York Times? Alone and exploited migrant children work brutal jobs across the United States. Have you seen this?
Senator, I haven't. Let me share with you what we are doing.
Have you seen these numbers? These are reports of trafficking and abuse of migrant children. You can see a massive surge that begins to happen when? When you come to office in 2021. Huge surge, reports of trafficking, reports of neglect and abuse. Let's just look at a few of the details. This is absolutely unbelievable. I can't believe this happens in the United States of America in this day and age. This is from the New York Times. Thousands of children have ended up in punishing jobs across the country, working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machinery in factories, all in violation of child labor laws. For example, there's a young girl named Carolina from Guatemala. She is 15 years old. What does she do? She packages Cheerios overnight at a factory. She says, sometimes I get tired and I feel sick. The Times goes on, her stomach often hurt. She wasn't sure if that was because of a lack of sleep or the stress of the incessant roar of the machines or her own worry. The Times goes on, far from home, many of these children are under intense pressure to earn money. They have to send cash back home to their families while often being in debt to their sponsors, quote unquote. For what? For smuggling fees, rent, and living expenses. One individual interviewed by the Times said this, I'm still quoting, it's the new child labor. You're taking children from another country and putting them into indentured servitude. I could go on and on. The Times details over a multi-month investigation, kid after kid, child after child. One 13-year-old forced to wash hotel sheets in Virginia. Kids running milking machines in Vermont, delivering meals in New York City, scrubbing dishes late at night, all in violation of our country's laws, all facilitated by your policies. Are you proud of this record?
Senator, the horrific exploitation of children is something that we do not condone. You are incorrectly attributing it to our policies. Let me share with you.
Wait a minute. It began. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. This massive surge began when you came to office. In your first year in office, there was a 342% surge of unaccompanied children across the border. You know, CBS reported that I'm going to quote them now, Mr. Biden's election, as well as policy changes announced by his administration, those would be your changes, led smugglers to tell migrant youth they had a better chance of being allowed to stay in the United States than they had under Trump. Meanwhile, you've lost track of tens of thousands of them. The Times also reviewed data that showed the government couldn't reach more than 85,000 of these children who they just turned over into the hands of smugglers, these are modern day slave traders. And you're just giving these children to them. What is going on? Why are you doing this?
Senator, of course, there are a number of factual inaccuracies in your question, but let me address two lines of effort that we have to combat the scourge of exploitation.
Why don't we just start with why you enabled it? Can we just start with that? Why is it that you have enabled 345,000 children to be smuggled across this border and then sent into the hands of modern-day slave traders? In 2021, you made the decision to change Title 42 to allow unaccompanied children to come into the United States and then to be sent into the interior of the country. Under the last administration, children were reunited with their families in their home country. You changed that, and as soon as you changed it, the numbers exploded. That is your responsibility.
Quite a number of false statements, Senator.
What is false about that statement?
So if I can state what I've been trying to state, one of the significant policy decisions that we have made is to focus our worksite enforcement investigative efforts, our criminal investigative efforts on unscrupulous employers that exploit individuals because of their vulnerabilities, and that includes underage workers.
That is not what the New York Times investigation found. Mr. Chairman, I just ask at this point, I'd like to enter into the record the New York Times article, as migrant children were put to work, U.S. ignored warnings. This is from April 17th, 2023. This is this morning. And I'd also like to enter into the record the New York Times article, Alone and Exploited Migrant Children Work Brutal Jobs Across the U.S. This is from February 25th, 2023. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What these articles show, Mr. Secretary, is that the administration has done nothing but facilitate this crisis. You changed Title 42. You allowed hundreds of thousands of migrant children to come across the border, and then you made it worse. When they became a political crisis for you, when that huge surge of kids across the border because you changed Title 42, when it became an optics crisis, what did you do? You began pressuring officials and agencies to skip the vetting process and get these kids out as soon as possible to sponsors who weren't vetted. Here's the Times again. As shelters filled with children, the administration began loosening vetting restrictions and urging case managers to speed the process along. You have at every stage facilitated this modern-day indentured servitude of minor children. Why should you not be impeached for this?
Senator, I look forward to discussing this issue further because you are misstating the facts so terribly.
I am reading you the facts from articles in the news, and your usual modus operandi is what you're doing again today, which is just to deny. Why have you permitted 345,000 children to come into this country unaccompanied? Why have you permitted thousands of them to be abused and exploited?
Senator, what we do is we enforce the law. But let me just say this.
You're not.
It is stunning to me, stunning, to hear you say that the prior administration reunited children with their parents.
Oh, I see. So this is their fault? But you're not going to take any responsibility for the indentured servitude and exploitation of children that is happening on your watch. A moment ago, you were crowing about the fact that you treated children so well, and yet we find tens of thousands of children who are forced to work as slaves because of your policies, and you turn around and blame a prior administration. Mr. Secretary, this is par for the course for you. You do it every time you appear before this committee. You do it every time you appear before Congress. I, for one, am sick and tired of it, and thousands of children are in physical danger because of what you are doing. You should have resigned long ago, and if you cannot change course, you should be removed from office.